Hey, beloved evergreen English students, the bees. This is Mr. Hebert, and I was told by a vast majority of 8 of you that reading the first part of the act, that would be part of your homework, would be helpful. So I did that for Act 2, and we're going to read up to about page 115. We start on page 103. We're going to read up to about page 115 on Act 3. If you have not finished reading or doing your part of Act 2, I should say, because we finished Act 2 together. But if you haven't finished your Act 2 questions, I would recommend doing those first and then coming back to this. But if you're ready to go, let's go ahead and enjoy Act 3. Act 3 is called Roxanne's Kiss, and this takes place outside of Roxanne's house. So you can imagine there's probably 2 stories. We know there's a balcony, second most famous balcony scene in literature, and probably a little road. We know that there's a bench, and going up and down different places and houses and buildings and things like that. Because we have people coming and going, and they can see down the road and say, oh, so-and-so was coming, and so forth. Exactly how much time has passed between Act 2 and Act 3 is not as clear, but what we do know is that Cyrano has been true to his promise in that he is writing letters for Christian, and they are sent to Roxanne to woo her and romance her and all of that. So the implication seems like there's been more than just the one letter that has been sent. And we also know that Roxanne and Christian still have not actually had a face-to-face conversation. But that will happen. And of course, this is something that Christian would want to avoid because he doesn't have Cyrano there. There wouldn't be little microchips and things like that in his ear. He'd have to be all on his own. So he's been avoiding that, or at least that hasn't taken place. But Roxanne certainly wants to have that conversation. At the beginning of the act, we have Ragueneau and the duenna who are sitting on a bench outside of Roxanne's place. And we hear a little bit of tragic news, or at least potentially tragic, and thankfully it turned out okay. So I'm on page 103. I've kind of given you the layout. And what we're going to see is that Ragueneau, his wife, left him for that musketeer that she was flirting with in Act 2. And Ragueneau was actually so distraught that he tried to kill himself. He tried to hang himself. But the hero of the day, of course, is Cyrano, and he prevented that from happening. All right, let's begin on page 103 at the bottom. Ragueneau. And so she ran off with a musketeer. I was ruined. I was alone. Remained nothing for me to do but hang myself. So I did that. Presently along comes Monsieur de Bergerac and cuts me down and makes me steward of his cousin. So his cousin, of course, is Roxanne, and so Ragueneau is kind of a guardian of Roxanne. Ruined, I thought your pastry was a great success. Lise loved the soldiers, and I loved the poets. Mars ate up all the cakes Apollo left. It did not take long. Roxanne, are you ready? We are late. Putting on my cape. Clomere across the way receives on Thursday nights. We are to have a psycho-colloquy upon the tender passion. So they've got like this Thursday night kind of discussion group, really, where they get together and talk about literature and intellectual stuff and philosophy and art, and, they get all together and be all smart. So that's what they got. Ah, the tender passion. Roxanne, hurry, dear. We shall miss the tender passion. Coming. And that what we hear is some music of string instruments off stage approaching. These musicians playing their instruments are coming up the street along with Cyrano. La, la, la. A serenade? How pleasant. No, no, no. F natural, you natural-born fool. And in comes Cyrano, and he's followed by 2 pages, which just means like young boys, and they're carrying theorbos, which are stringed instruments. And we'll find out why he has accompanying musicians here. No doubt your honor knows F natural when he hears, I am a musician, infant, a pupil of Gassendi. La, la, here, give me that. La, 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 la. And Roxanne appearing on the balcony. Is that you, Cyrano? I who praise your lilies fair, but long to love your roses. I'll be down. Wait. Did you train these virtuosi? No. I won them on a bet from Dasusi. We were debating a fine point of grammar when, pointing out these 2 young nightingales dressed up like peacocks with their instruments, he cries, No, but I know. I'll wager you a day of music. Well, of course, he lost. And so until tomorrow, they are mine, my private orchestra. Pleasant at first, but they become a trifle. Here, go play a minuet to Montfleury. And tell him I sent you. I came here as usual to inquire after our friend. And play out of tune. And keep on playing. So basically, Cyrano won these 2 musicians. They work for this guy named Dasusi, and he won them on a bet. And I love that it was on the subject of grammar. And I love how he says, well, of course I won. So now he's won these 2 pages. They're his little private musicians, and they have to go with him wherever he wants them to go. They have to play whatever he wants them to play. He sends them off to play for Montfleury, whom he hates. They have to play out of tune, and they have to keep on playing, which basically means he'll be like, shut up, shut up, shut up, and they just have to keep on playing out of tune because they're on contract. All right, so they go off, and now the subject of Christian, of course, comes up as Roxanne comes outside. Our friend, so he was interrupted there. He says, to inquire after our friend with the great soul. He's referring to Christian. He is beautiful and brilliant, and I love him. Do you find Christian intellectual? More so than you even. I am glad. No man ever so beautifully said those things, those pretty nothings that are everything. Sometimes he falls into a reverie. His inspiration fails. Then all at once he will say something absolutely, really? How like a man that you think a man who has a handsome face must be a fool. He talks well about matters of the heart. He does not talk. He rhapsodizes, dreams. He writes well. Wonderfully. Listen now. And she's reciting from memory, which is pretty impressive. Take my heart, I shall have it all the more. Plucking the flowers, we keep the plant in bloom. Well, poof! And this, knowing you have in store more heart to give than I to find heart room. First he has too much, then too little. Just how much heart does he need? And this is funny because these are Cyrano's words. And so he's kind of criticizing and making fun of his own poetic creation. And so the audience gets to enjoy this on a little deeper level. You are teasing me. You are jealous. Jealous of his poetry. You poets are like that. And these last lines, are they not the last word in tenderness? There is no more to say. Only believe that unto you my whole heart gives one cry. and writing writes down more than you receive, sending you kisses through my fingertips. Lady, oh, read my letter with your lips. Yes, those last lines. But he overwrites. Listen to this. You know them all by heart? Every one. I may call that flattering. He is a master. Oh, come. Yes, a master. A master, if you will. Sort of giving it over. I'm not going to argue with you. All right. And the duenna comes down stage. Monsieur de Guiche. And we don't like this guy, of course. Go inside. If he does not find you here, it may be just as well. He may suspect my secret. Yes, he is in love with me, and he is powerful. Let him not know. One look would frost my roses before bloom. Very well, very well. We were just going. So Cyrano has gone inside, and de Guiche is here, and this would be very dangerous if he were to suspect or especially know that she's in love with somebody else, and especially if de Guiche knew that Roxanne is in love with Christian, because de Guiche has political power, and they are in a war with Spain. Christian is a soldier, Cyrano is a soldier, and he could make things, let's just say, very difficult for Christian in his authority over the soldiers. So this is a big secret. She can't just come out and say, de Guiche, get somebody else, because there's a lot of things that he could do. So she says to de Guiche, we were just going. I came only to say farewell. You leave Paris? Yes. For the front. For the war front. Ah. And tonight. Ah. We have orders to besiege Arras. Arras? Yes. My departure leaves you cold. Oh, not that. It has left me desolate. When shall I see you? Ever? Did you know I was made colonel? Bravo. Regiment of the Guards. Of the Guards? His regiment. Your cousin. The mighty man of words. Down there we may have an accounting. So, he's come here to say to Roxanne, I'm being called to the front, which honestly she's not all that hurt by, because he'd be out of her hair. But he's also been promoted. I kind of jumped ahead a little bit, but he's been promoted to Regiment of the Guards. And she goes, the Guards. Now, she's probably immediately thinking Christian. Remember, the Guards also includes Cyrano. And so that's what de Guiche interprets it as, with, hey, down there in a battle, out there in a war, he says, we may have an accounting, your cousin, your mighty man of words, and I. Because everything can be all crazy, you know. Somebody could get hit. Somebody could get stabbed with a sword. You know, these sorts of things may happen. And so that's what he's considering. And this also means if he's going, if de Guiche is going, that means the Guards are going to the front, which of course means Cyrano, but especially Christian. Oh my gosh, it's Christian. It's my love. It's a war. Don't want him to get killed. So we see Roxanne's emotion change from kind of indifferent, kind of like, whatever, to genuinely concerned. Now, as this conversation continues, de Guiche is going to misinterpret her concern to be about him. And because she is concerned about him, as he sees it, she must have feelings for him. So, all this to keep in mind. Are you sure the Guards are ordered? Under my command. Christian. What is it? To the war. Perhaps never again to... When a woman cares, is that nothing? And so he's kind of thinking, like, you care? Like, you really do care. You say this now to me? Now at the very moment? Tell me something. My cousin. You say you mean to be revenged on him. Do you mean that? Why? Would you care? Not for him. Do you see him? Now and then. He goes about everywhere nowadays with one of the cadets, Neuvillers. Remember Christian de Neuvillette? He doesn't really know his name. Roxanne's got to play it cool. A tall man, blonde, rosy cheeks, handsome, poof, and a fool. So he appears. But Cyrano, what will you do to him? Order him into danger? He loves that. I know what I should do. What? Leave him here with his cadets while all the regiment goes on to glory. That would torture him. To sit all through the war with folded arms? I know his nature. If you hate that man, strike at his self-esteem. So, look at what she's just done. She has used De Guiche's hatred and vengeful idea for Cyrano to help Christian. At least this is what the plan is. Like, you want to get back at Cyrano? You don't get him out to the front where you can hurt him. You keep him away from the battle. You keep him away from the glory. And that will torture him the most. He's got to sit at home and twiddle his thumbs and fold his arms. And everybody gets out there and gets all the action, because we know how Cyrano is. He loves the action. He loves all of that. Loves the boastfulness. Loves all that. And this would just be the worst thing. And De Guiche, again, is just getting so overwhelmed with, she cared about that I was going to leave, and she's even willing to help me get revenge on her own cousin. It must be love. Oh, woman, who but a woman would have thought of this? Great line. He'll eat his heart out while his Gascon friends bite their nails all day long in Paris here. And you will be avenged. You love me then? A little? She smiles. Making my enemies your own? Hating them? I should like to see in that a sign of love, Roxanne. Perhaps it is one. Which we know it is about love, but not for you, De Guiche. So he takes out all these papers, and he says, here are the orders for each company, ready to send. So this is for the guards. Ha! I'll keep that. Ha ha, Cyrano. You too, you play your little games, do you? Sometimes. And you... I am mad over you. Now, so far, this plan seems to be going okay. But it's about to backfire because De Guiche is about to go off to the war, but he's finally getting a sense of love from Roxanne. He doesn't want to go off to war like this. So he wants to rush things a little bit. Listen, I leave tonight, but let you through my hands now when I feel you trembling? Listen, close by in the Rue d'Orléans, the Capuchins have their new convent. Those are monks, Capuchin monks. By their law, no layman may pass inside those walls. I'll see to that. Their sleeves are wide enough to cover me. The servants of my uncle Cardinal will fear his nephew. Remember, his uncle is the Cardinal, who's a not only political but religious figure. These are monks, so he's got the connections. Okay, no one can really go into the convent unless you're a monk, but he's going to hide in there. That's what he says. Those sleeves are wide enough to cover me. So, I'll come to you masked after everyone knows I have gone. Oh, let me wait one day. Oh, if this be known, your honor. Bah! The war, your duty. Phew! Only say yes. No, whisper. I ought not to let you. Ah! Oh, and she pretends to break down and get all crying. Ah! Let go. But then to an aside that he can't hear, Christian remains. Then she goes back to him. I must have you a hero, Antoine. Heaven, so you can love. One for whose sake I fear, which is true, just as Christian, not you, De Guiche, but he thinks so. I go. Will that content you? And he kisses her hand. Yes, my friend. And he goes out. So the idea here is he's going to leave, okay, and kind of hide out in the convent where the monks are. But what he wants to do is ultimately marry her. Okay, he's going to send a word to the monk because he can do the ceremony. So he wants to marry her tonight before he leaves, because now she loves him. And this is a sticky situation now. This is kind of backfiring. She's trying to keep Christian safe, but in that he interpreted the love. So this is getting a little dicey, getting a little difficult. Okay. Now, of course, Cyrano has not been hearing this conversation. He's been inside, and Roxanne is absolutely right to predict here that Cyrano would be downright ticked off beyond all capacity of measuring if Roxanne took away his glory. So she's going to try to make sure that's kept a secret. So he leaves, De Guiche leaves, and the duenna says, yes, my friend, right? Sort of imitating and mocking Roxanne there. Not a word to Cyrano. He would never forgive me if he knew I stole his war. Cousin! And Cyrano comes out. We are going over. Alcondra speaks tonight, and Lysimon. So she's pointing to a house across the street where they can have their little intellectual conversation. My little finger says we shall not hear everything. Never mind me. Look! Oh, look! Pointing at the house where the meeting is. The knocker tied up in a napkin. Yes, they muzzled you because you bark too loud and interrupt the lecture, little beast. So putting a little silencer on the knocker because the meeting has already started and they don't want to be interrupted. Kind of like turning off your phone. And the door opens. Enter. She turns back to Cyrano. If Christian comes, tell him to wait. Oh? And when he comes, what will you talk about? You always know beforehand. About? Well, you will not tell him, will you? I am dumb. About nothing, or about everything. I shall say, speak of love in your own words. Improvise, rhapsodize, be eloquent. Good. Shh. Oh, shh. Yes. Not a word. Thank you so much. He must be unprepared. Of course. Shh. So, at this point, Christian is about to enter. Now, just kind of backtrack a little bit. I get the impression that Roxanne and Christian have not really had a face-to-face conversation. It's only been through the letters. There is a tiny implication that maybe they've had, but if they've had conversation, Cyrano has had time to kind of prepare him. However, I really don't get the impression that they've had conversation because that actually makes what's about to transpire more fun. But she has said, I want him unprepared. I don't want him to know ahead of time. And I don't know how Cyrano feels about this. I don't know if he feels it like, oh, shoot, I need to prepare Christian because he doesn't have the words. But on the other hand, maybe she'll learn what Christian is really all about. But Roxanne, he wants Roxanne to be happy, right? And he's going to do everything that he can for Christian to be the man that she wants and expects and really sees him to be. So we left off on the very, very bottom of 115. So when we pick it up on Thursday, we will do from 16 to the end of Act 3, which is on 148. And like I said, the second most famous balcony scene in literary history. So let me know if you have any questions. Make sure you've got the Act 2 study guide ready to go, all the questions for Act 2. And I'll probably be posting a couple of journals there for you. Okay, bye-bye.